and I will attempt to speed up on this last one. So once again, we're going to start our kind of process by covering up our answer choices. And from there, we're going to read the last sentence. So step 1, cover up the answer choices. Step 2, read the last sentence. So for this one, it says, which of the following valvular abnormalities is most consistent with the murmur in this patient? So we have a valvular abnormality that is most consistent with a murmur. So next, we want to move on to step 3, which is figure out how many steps it's going to take to answer this question. So looking at this is probably going to be a 2-step question again. First, we need to figure out what the exact murmur is, and what disease he has and what's led to that murmur. And then we can figure out exactly what the murmur itself is. So kind of what the disease is that would have led to the murmur, and then the murmur itself. So kind of 2 steps there. So now we're going to read the question. So we got a 23-year-old man who's found unconscious with fresh needle tracks in his arms and is brought into the emergency department by ambulance. The patient is resuscitated with naloxone and is admitted to the hospital. His temperature is 102.2 degrees Fahrenheit or 39 degrees Celsius. Upon examination, he has a blowing systolic heart murmur that is heard loudest at the left lower sternal border. The murmur varies with respiration, becoming louder with inspiration. We've got a systolic murmur heard loudest at the left lower sternal border, and it varies with respiration, loudest with inspiration. Additionally, the physician notes prominent jugular-venous pulse. So it's got some JVD or JVP. Now we're going to read that last sentence again, thinking about some answer choices. So which of the following valvular abnormalities is most consistent with the murmur in this patient? So what do we think would be, which murmur do we think we're looking for here? We're looking for aortic stenosis, mitral stenosis, some tricuspid valvular issues, some pulmonic valvular issues, those type of things. So you've got your thought process going. Then we're going to uncover the answer choices. And you can see those here. And then we want to look at the answer choices, working our way from our last one up. So if we look at our last one, we have E, which is tricuspid regurg. We have D, which is mitral regurg. We have C, which is tricuspid stenosis. We have B, which is mitral stenosis. And we have A, which is aortic stenosis. All right, so I'll let you take a chance at it here.
All right, think about an answer, and let me open up the poll here. All right, this is our last poll, so let's make it a good one. All right, please put in an answer. All right, and again, even if you don't know the answer, take your best shot. Try to mentally cross out obviously the wrong answers that you can reason out, and then take a guess on what you got the remaining if you're still trying to figure it out. All right, so we're still tabulating. Close to 2/3 have responded now. We'll keep it open for a couple more seconds. All right, looks like we've got 70%. So let's go ahead and close the poll, and then I will share the responses with everyone. And you can see over half of you feel that the answer is tricuspid regurg, followed by mitral regurgitation and tricuspid stenosis. So let's see what the actual answer is, and is indeed tricuspid regurg. All right, back to you, Dan.
Great. So yeah, the answer here is tricuspid regurg. So walking through this question, I've got a 23-year-old guy. He's coming in unconscious with some needle tracks on his arm. That should definitely make us think of some maybe IV drug use or abuse. So we kind of read on. They gave him some naloxone, which caused him to recover, which is not so important for our question here, but maybe there's some opiate use of some kind. Next we hear that he's got a fever and a murmur. And that should make us think of, endocarditis. So anytime you hear fever and a murmur in a question, you should be thinking about endocarditis. It doesn't mean that endocarditis is going to be the right answer every single time, but it does mean that you need to at least consider it. You see those two things kind of pair up in a question. So next they tell us he has a systolic murmur, where it's loudest is the left lower sternal border, and that it increases with inspiration. So what are the murmurs that increase with inspiration? Well, those are actually your right-sided murmurs. So which ones are your right-sided murmurs? Well, that's going to be your tricuspid stenosis, your tricuspid regurg, your pulmonic stenosis, and your pulmonic. So those are your right-sided murmurs. And then they tell us, it's systolic. So of those, which ones would be systolic? Well, that would be tricuspid regurg and pulmonic stenosis. So from here on, we've got enough information to answer the question. So we know that it was right-sided and increased with inspiration. So we got our 4 right-sided murmurs. And then we just needed to know it was systolic, which they gave us to, kind of a little bit earlier in the same sentence, essentially. And from there, we can say, hey, this should be tricuspid regurg. And then we would be able to uncover our answers, see if that matches up with kind of what we thought. And if it does, at least read through the other answer choices and see what we can, eliminate if we weren't able to come up to, that answer directly. So now we just need to make sure that that fits with, our endocarditis and our IV drug use or abuse. And it does. So, folks that use IV drugs, the tricuspid valve is the most commonly involved valve for your endocarditis. And so all that makes sense. So great. So our answer here is going to be E, tricuspid regurgitation. And that's kind of a review of that question. So I think that is a good way to wrap that up. Kind of move on to our rest of our PowerPoint here. All right, so some dissection tips. Once again, we suggest everybody have an approach. We've got a 7-step approach here that we like to, or at least just kind of reviewing with everybody, and the RX coach initiative that we're doing here. You can kind of work more on that with our coaches, kind of in a one-on-one manner. The other thing we just kind of want to stress is try to utilize all the information that they're giving you. Sometimes you think that, hey, the information there is not important, or it's not needed. The information they're giving you in the questions is there for a reason. They're not really trying to trick you. They are trying to give you information that you need to answer the question. And then once again, each question is created to test a set of related topics and content area. So if you can kind of ask yourself, hey, what do we think that this question is trying to test? For that last question, what do we think that question is trying to test? Maybe it's just the murmur itself. And if you just told yourself that an IV drug user had a murmur, what murmur is it? Most of you would say tricuspid. And if you can, kind of even boil it down to just something that simple, maybe it can kind of help you get the right answer. All right, that does it for me, I believe.
All right, great. So, Dan, thank you so much for going through those question dissections and providing a breakdown of the RX Coach 7-step methodology here. So just some general advice as you prepare for the USMLE. Obviously, do a lot of questions, and use our methodology or methodology that you feel works for you. We do ask that when that you do plan ahead, do a state schedule. In fact, we are going to be releasing an RX coach, an RX study plan coming soon that you can use. And once you develop, you should be able to stick with it. If you keep a couple of things in mind in terms of not over scheduling, make sure you have times for breaks, exercise, be with family, with loved ones, so forth. Make sure that you stay relaxed and grounded. We do have a multi-step process at the very beginning of first aid. If you look at section 1, there's a schedule for allowing you to plan yourself so that you don't get too flustered, and that you approach the exam preparation in a very, very deliberate way. A couple other things is you want to save crammable subjects for the very end. Those pretty much include things like biochemistry, metabolic pathways, some pharmacology, and some micro, because the concepts are fairly tend to recur very often. With regards to how does a bug get there, how's it diagnosed, how's its treatment. They tend to ask about those questions, but again, across a multitude, microbiology and bacteriology and so forth. And then with drugs, it's with mechanism of actions, indications, and so forth. We talk about varying your studying, but that being said, probably the number one thing you can do is do questions, and do lots of questions. And when you're doing questions, make sure you integrate everything you can, because multi-step questions often go from one related concept to the next. And so the more you can interconnect these concepts and apply them clinically, especially, the more likely you'll be able to overcome any scenario and dissect any scenario you see on the USMLE. Finally, when you are doing your high yield prep, make sure you start with concepts that you're already familiar with, because you've already gone through a couple of years of medical school, or you've even graduated from medical school. And so, a lot of that information is still there somewhere in your head. You just need to actually be able to practice what's called retrieval of that information. And again, that's usually through self-testing with high quality question banks like USMLE-Rx.